Hello, everybody, and welcome to the January 22nd Trips and Traps. He abandoned me last week, but he's here today. Richard Migliori, Andy Serling. We got 5 races to go over. We're going to actually start from the one race from Sunday, the week before, when we ran that one card.
Yeah, we got to catch up. I had a bad trip getting here last week, but we'll try to make up for it today.
Yes, and we'll start out with the third race on Sunday, the 11th, and we want to talk about mostly the 4-horse Miss Bellamy. And the horse will have a little bit of a bump at the start. I don't know how much it affected her. I think it was more about the rider. We're also going to eventually talk about the 10, a first-time starter. Just thought that horse ran with a little bit of interest. But mostly, I want to hear Richie's take on a horse, Miss Bellamy, who breaks a step slow, but she's got a lot of speed. It just seems like her rider didn't give her her best chance in here. No,
and you know, uncharacteristic, I think, for Manny Franco, who I think has been riding very well. He made a poor choice not allowing her to go on. Now, she did take a step in. She bounced off the 3-horse. She righted herself. And you see right here, she's got run on her mind, and she's basically running off with him. And when a horse starts flipping their head around, Andy, they use so much energy. And particularly a cheap horse, you're better off putting your hands down, allowing her to clear off, and then she'll probably come back to you, and you're not going to waste so much energy fighting her.
It almost feels like she spent more energy in not being in front than she would have spent if she was actually in front. And it really takes away her chance. And also, Richie, it cedes the advantage even further to the horse in the lead.
Well, you can just look at the body language of the two riders. The horse on the lead, the eventual winner with Irad Ortiz, is just going comfortably. There's no fight. It looks very fluid. Manny Franco on the outside of him, her head was going up in the air. He's rearing back against the reins. And one is very kind of nice continuity, nice flow, and the other was just very disjointed.
Yeah, and the thing is, it's like, you see this frequently, Richie. A rider fights a horse, and then he starts trying with him. And once he starts trying, the horse just gives him nothing. It's kind of like the horse says, oh, now you want to go? You know what? I don't. And I actually thought this horse ran reasonably well. And one of the reasons I liked the 10 a little bit was the pace held together well in this race, not just the winner, but the others. But I thought this horse ran reasonably well considering she'd had enough top of the stretch.
Oh, and she really actually hung in there a lot better than I would have thought she would after fighting. And it's interesting what you're saying. It sends mixed emotion, or mixed signals to the horse, I should say, where the horse got run on his mind, you're taking it away from him. Now when he gives it back to you, now you want to go. It's a young horse that wanted to show speed. And let's face facts, cheaper horses don't pull and finish. I also like the horse that you pointed out, Weekend Score, who I thought finished extremely well, kind of almost sneakily. And I think this was a horse, first-time starter, need a little more direction early. I think a rider has to be conscious of the fact you're on a young horse that you have to basically teach.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I wonder, this was a first-time starter, had a 10-pound bug rider. I like the fact that she broke so sharply in this race.
Yeah.
Then she dropped completely out of it, and she came a little run. I mean, it's natural, I guess, to come a little run, but it wasn't a race that totally collapsed. She's really the only horse that came with run, and she had that sharpness out of the gate, and I think she'll get something from this start, and maybe we'll see a more experienced rider in her next start.
Well, I think even the horse herself will realize, oh, I'm supposed to continue running, because you can almost see she was waiting for her rider to, what do I do? Give me direction. And he allowed her to settle, and she finished okay. All in all, it was probably a good first race, but you would like to see him be just a touch more aggressive.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that horse will run better. Miss Bellamy was claimed by Chris Engelheimer this race. I think she'll be much more forwardly placed in her next start. The next horse we want to talk about is the 5th race on January 15th. And I want to talk about the one, Deputy Buster Stone. Deputy Buster Stone will create his own problems in this race because there was an incident at the start. Both rider and horse were fine after the race. Deputy Buster Stone could have been the clear speed in this race, has the natural speed. Maybe it's the rail, maybe it's the horse. It wasn't the rider's fault. Just doesn't really get in the bridle early, Richie.
He really didn't, and I think this is one of those cases, and I've talked about this in the past, Andy. There's a lot of empty space here inside, and I think he almost got a little bit lost out of that very small chute that we race at the 3/4 here on the inner track. And he kind of got in the race here, but now to me he's running with the emergency brake on because he's the kickback, maybe being inside a horse, is just a little bit tentative, where you know if he was maybe outside or on the lead, he'd be more in the bridle.
Yeah, I felt like this was a horse that really wants an outside post because he'll just be more comfortable in there. As you say, he's not comfortable inside. And also, if he breaks a step slow from the outside, I think his flow will put him in the race more as opposed to, you say, being distracted. I don't think this is in any way Silvera's fault, but this horse ends up getting in a real package. And I don't think he ran that badly when you consider the break, you consider he was never comfortable, and he's got nowhere to go here. And eventually, Richie, he's going to have to angle out and try to go around. He even has a little run towards the end.
Well, I agree with what you're saying. No way Ruben Silvera's fault. The post position and the horse kind of caused this trip. But I think this was a case of where people say, well, he was riding him. But this was a horse that was running tentatively in behind horses. And if he had free space, I think he would have run a lot better.
I agree. I think I would love to see Deputy Buster Stone get in the exact same race and draw the outside post and see what he would do. I think he's comfortable the whole way, and I actually think he would win.
I agree. If he's set up outside in the clear, third or fourth, he'd be a much different horse.
It'd be interesting to see where he draws next time he runs. I want to talk about a race that featured disqualification of a horse, and it was a legit DQ in the stretch, who ran very well, El Grillo. But GR's Giant, who breaks a step slow from the outside, this horse, he's the horse who actually got fouled in the stretch, not that it was going to cost him a win. This poor horse is wide every step of the way, Richie, and he never stops trying.
It was miraculous the way he ran. I've talked about this a lot in the past. You can't be wide on both turns here and expect to finish anywhere. He's the widest of all in the first turn. He was the widest of all into the second turn, and he never quit. And you can see how much he stays in the bridle for a very long way, Andy.
Yeah, and I actually like the ride that Camacho gave him in that he's hung out here. He makes a decision, and his decision is to be aggressive and go towards the lead. I like that move. If he sits in the back, out in the middle of the pack, becomes a victim of the pace or out develops, I don't think he has any chance. I like the fact that he was aggressive here, Richie.
Yeah, I mean, he was dealt a poor hand, and he was playing it the best he could, and I agree with you, especially with these kind of horses, cheaper horses, maiden claimers. You can't run away from him and continue to fight with him. He kind of compromised. He gave in enough where the horse was able to ease towards the leaders, but he never had any opportunity to save any ground because of the post.
Yeah, I mean, there wasn't anything he could do. It's not like if he sat in the back of the pack, he was going to find a spot, and he had to move into the race as well. I think the actual eventual winner's back in last, to point out not only Speed held okay in that the 6 horse was on the pace, the gray, ends up finishing second. But this horse, GR's Giant, you're going to even see it in the stretch. He's fighting with the 6, and after he gets fouled, he actually almost comes back and gets third.
Yeah, he never quit, and he had every opportunity to before he was bothered, and then certainly after he was bothered. I think it's a good illustration if you go back and watch the winner of a horse that was having to be ridden through that kickback we talk about, and when he got in the clear, how she really leveled off and finished. But I think post position really dealt this horse a poor hand, and you gotta like this horse going forward, don't you, Andy?
Oh, yeah. I mean, look at him. He's still trying. You can see he's still fighting after those horses. He gets steadied here when the 6 drifts out. He's got to steady him. He goes back, and he's coming back after the 2 horses inside of him. I love this performance by this horse. I mean, I don't think he's going to set the world on fire, but he gets an inside post or a fair post against this group of horses. Look out.
Yeah, I agree with you. After he broke the step slow, just a quick question to you, and maybe I'm the one should be answering it because I used to ride. But do you think he would have been better served to just kind of take him up a little bit and dive to the fence?
Absolutely. I'm surprised that more riders don't do that. There are situations where you get the outside post. Getting left a length in a race is a great thing.
It gives you that opportunity to duck in, and you're going to wind up in the same place, but without using your horses as hard, and then you have to be lucky and work out a trip. But that was the one question I had about it.
Yeah, I mean, and I know you're doing it. It's a Monday morning quarterback thing,
sure.
The situation you're given. That would have been his only chance to have saved ground. I'll tell you something. This horse saves ground in the race, he wins.
I agree.
We'll turn our attention to the 6th race, actually, from the 17th. This was Saturday's card, and this is a horse, Pulpits Express. First time David Jacobson coming in from the West Coast gets very unlucky.
Very unlucky, and then I felt bad for Irad Ortiz when she stumbled so hard, came back up, horse's head hit him right in the face, and basically this horse was eliminated completely at the break.
No, I agree, and it's interesting about it, and you'll see it more. You'll see just how much this horse loses at the start, because the horse will lose this ground, and the race was won by a horse, the 1 horse, who was well back. But he's already separated. He's probably lost a good 8 lengths, if not more, from the horses in front. And this is a horse that could have placed himself more forwardly. Think of how much he has to use, and it's very easy to see, he's in those pink silks, just to get outside of the eventual winner, the 1 horse, Bamada, who did absolutely nothing but break well and ease back from the inside.
Well, one smoothly got to that position. The other one, also, when they stumble like that, Andy, basically they'll panic. You know, a horse will scare himself. A horse being a flight animal, they'll stumble, and their first reaction is to get up and run, and then their breathing isn't as regulated or rhythmic.
Well, that makes perfect sense. And I think Irad does a very good job of calming him down and just getting him to get back in the flow of race. He's looking behind him. He sees Bamada. I know Pulpits Express, he finished last in this race, and he's beaten 10, 12, I don't know, about 20 lengths. I don't think it makes any difference to me at all, because to me, he showed enough just that he was able to get back into the race, Richie.
To get back in the race at all. And right here, I mean, she's traveling very well, and I should say he is traveling well. I keep on making that mistake. But you had to think at some point he has to let go because it was just too much to overcome.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. You can't really quantify it. You can say, well, had that stumble, he fell back 6 lengths, 8 lengths, whatever it was, but you don't know how it affected the horse mentally, as you were pointing out. And I think just the fact that he was actually able to regather himself and get in the race, but even there he's throwing his head. He's obviously had an impossible trip in here. Iran's not going to beat up on him late in the race. But whether or not he was going to beat Bamada, I don't know. He did win very easily, won by 7 lengths,
sure,
but he would have been no worse than second. And it's not impossible that he could have won the race.
Well, and I think when you saw him turning his, kind of throwing his head there in the stretch, it was more Irad trying to get him to switch leads, and he hung on his left lead, and you wonder how much the stumble at the start maybe caused that as well. Sometimes, they've become so disjointed that they never really find their right rhythm.
Well, we'll see what happens next time he runs, if he can get out of the gate more cleanly. I tend to think in general stumbles are just bad luck as opposed to a horse that breaks slowly from the gate. He's one to watch. And another one to watch, speaking of a stumble at the start, this was a race won by Tensador, the heavy favorite, the 4th race on Monday, but the 4-horse overall. This is an amazing performance.
It really is. And
staying on.
Let's give Angel Cruz some props here for staying on. Now, he lost his left stirrup, and it took him forever to get it back. And it's a difficult thing. He's as good as he rides, he's still an inexperienced rider. Older riders have had to deal with that more often. And, Andy, I used to ride with heavier stirrups than most riders because, obviously they want to have their tack weigh as little as possible. But for the reason I did that was if you did lose a stirrup at the break, it would hang down more instead of bouncing around so much. You could find it easier.
Oh, that's actually interesting. Most riders don't do that in general?
No, because you want your tack to your saddle and your stirrups to be as light as possible to make weight. That was the one place where I said, you know what, I'll let them be a few more ounces so that they hang down when I do lose them.
Right. Well, it's interesting. I mean, how often do you lose the iron? It doesn't happen that often.
Well, believe it or not, it'll happen more than you think. It's just that guys get very good at being able to get them back. And in this case, I mean, I felt for him. He was just doing a good job to stay in the middle of this horse.
Yeah, I mean, he does a very good job of keeping him into the race. He doesn't fall that badly out of it. I mean, listen, riders fall off when things like this happen, and it's understandable. He manages to stay on. He gets back in the stirrups eventually around the turn, maybe closer to the backstretch, and this horse makes a heck of a run just to get back in the race. There he is down the inside, back in last.
Yeah, you see him making his way into the picture again. And this horse really ran on, and I think this is a horse that, again, we talk about a horse having a right to throw in the towel. Well, he didn't throw in the towel.
No, and this was a good field. This was not a bad field of maidens. This horse was meeting some tough horses. Tensador had run well against opens in his first start, and his connections thought enough before scratching him to enter him as a maiden in the Jerome. And I like the ride that Carmouche is giving on the horse with the pink hat, because he keeps the favorite in as long as he can until he just doesn't have enough horse. At this point, Cruz, I think, knows that Overall doesn't have the horse to catch the horses in front, but he does an amazing job just getting close.
Yeah, and I think it was probably fun for Angel Cruz. He probably learned something watching this chess match unfold in front of him with Carmouche trying to keep the favorite with Manny Franco, Tensador in. And when you have a lot of horse, though, you seem to be able to make those seams.
Yeah, no, I agree. He's a nice horse. But those horses behind him are okay. The 6 didn't run that badly possessed trying to stretch out because he's a sprinter that wasn't able to get the lead because of the aggressive ride in the winner. Does it for this week's races? We can always use your help. It's Trips and Traps at NYRANK.com.